Trump could win this, and you say that he's a con man.
Yeah, well, he's not going to win the nomination. It would be a catastrophe for the Republican Party.
Donald Trump is not going to be the nominee of this party.
He's not going to be the nominee.
Donald Trump is not going to be the Republican nominee.
He is not going to be the nominee.
Donald Trump is not going to get the nomination.
Donald Trump, who is not going to be the nominee.
Folks, Donald Trump is not a serious person. This is a carnival act.
We'll show you how they got it wrong and how Trump won the Republican Game of Thrones. Our pollster, Matt Towery, who nailed the primaries, will predict Trump's running mate.
A gigantic 2,000-mile wall along the Mexican border. The cost, $80 billion by some estimates.
Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Charlie LeDuff will examine Trump's plan to wall off our border and how we tried that once before.
Didn't even slow him down.
Oh, I know who voted. Bernie voted for it. I know he did.
Hillary.
And Hillary voted for it too.
Plus, a dark horse Senate candidate is making waves in Florida. We'll put U.S. Senate candidate Todd Wilcox to the test.
We have to be a part of the solution, and we have to lead that solution.
This is Money, Power, and Politics.
All right, well, we've compared the Republican race to Game of Thrones for weeks, so we have to start with the presumed victor. We reached out to Hugh Parkinson and Insiders ABC to show you how they already put Trump on the throne.
We have no control. People are flooding across. We need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly.
The greatest builder is me, and I would build the greatest wall you have ever seen.
I don't think they like me very much.
That night when Ted Cruz inadvertently whacked his wife in the face, then inadvertently whacked her in the face again, will go down in history as the night the whole Republican establishment got whacked and their party officially became the party of Trump. Well, Cruz dropped out after his would-be running mate literally wiped out on stage. Of course, we hate that Carly Fiorina fell, and we're glad that she's okay. But this moment was a striking metaphor for the Cruz campaign. The whole race was slipping away from him right in front of his face, and he didn't appear to notice until he crashed.
We gave it everything we've got.
In hindsight, he never should have picked an imaginary running mate when he's buried in second place. It came across as a stunt and hastened his demise. And it certainly didn't help when he formed an alliance with John Kasich that played out like Dumb and Dumber.
I'm sick and tired of losing the primaries.
Okay, Ted.
Then as he circled the drain, the heckler smelled blood.
I heard Lion Ted was going to be here, so we had to come represent. You're lying. Once
Well,
again, Lion Ted!
And they picked him apart.
America is a better country.
Without you.
Thank you for those kind sentiments.
And it just kept going.
And a question that everyone here should ask.
Are you Canadian?
And then after they called him a fish monster.
You look like a fish monster, and you're a terrible person!
Cruz had had enough. He was fried, and it showed.
I tell you what I really think of Donald Trump.
He unloaded on Trump, sort of like Marco Rubio did back when he was circling the drain.
Donald Trump is a con artist. The party of Lincoln and Reagan and the presidency of the United States will never be held by a con artist.
It didn't work for Rubio, and it certainly didn't work for Ted Cruz. He flamed out just as Rubio did in a blaze of insults that he may now regret because they did not line up with what he said before about Trump and about his own campaign.
When it comes to Donald Trump, I like Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. He's bold and brash, and he's willing to speak the truth. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. I'm glad he's running. He's energizing a lot of people. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth. He's a friend of mine. Listen, Donald Trump is a serial philanderer. I have not responded in kind, and I don't intend to. I will continue to sing Donald's praises personally. Describes his battles with venereal disease as his own personal Vietnam. Listen, I like and respect Donald. If anyone has seen the movie Back to the Future 2, the screenwriter says that he based the character Biff Tannen on Donald Trump. A caricature of a braggadocious, arrogant buffoon. I'm not going to engage in the media's game of throwing rocks and attacking other Republicans. I'm just not going to do it. We are looking at the Biff Tannen presidency.
All right, let's bring in our pollster, Matt Towery. Matt, you correctly predicted which way the story was going months ago. First, I want to brag because Bloomberg News just ranked your work, and in particular your son Matthew's work, among the best in the country, the most accurate polling. I'm going to lead the witness. That is correct, is it not?
It is true, and we're very proud that we were able to poll for TVT and be a part of your team this year.
All right, that's 11 polls, 8 states, an accuracy rating of 91%. So, fellow with a hot hand, predict for us now who we're going to have as a running mate for Donald Trump.
Well, I have to start off with a little disclaimer because in my political years, I was Newt Gingrich's chairman when he was Speaker of the House. His name is being floated around. The last person that Newt would ever tell would be me because we both are political analysts and we don't want to put ourselves in a bad position. I do think he's being strongly considered, though, and so that's a possibility. Other names I'm hearing, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina, and I think John Kasich is going to be strongly considered because, as you well know, Craig, he didn't battle with Trump as much. They didn't have those skirmishes, and Ohio is critical, along with Florida, to any Republican hoping to win against Hillary Clinton.
All right, Fox 13, Fox 35 pollster Matt Towery, thank you for your time.
Coming up, meet the newcomer who's making some hay in Florida's Republican Senate race. We'll sit down with Todd Wilcox. And Charlie LeDuff will show us how illegal immigrants are still crossing the border.
They have their boats lined up along the river to bring people across.
At night?
Anytime.
And he'll show us why a prior plan to wall off the border did not work.
Didn't even slow them down.
Hi, my name's Todd Wilcox.
Todd Wilcox fought in Desert Storm. He commanded a Special Forces A-team in East Asia, worked as an Arabic-speaking CIA case officer, then built a company that supports military and intelligence and hired more than 600 people. Now he's running for U.S. Senate as a Republican to replace Marco Rubio. He grew up in South Tampa, says his family was poor, and he said he skipped free lunches to avoid the humiliation of taking a handout. He's a political newcomer, but he's winning straw polls at Republican grassroots events.
Mr. Wilcox, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're gravely concerned about the negative effect that politicians in both parties are having on the system. Give us some specifics. Can you name some specific politicians in both parties you think are having a negative effect?
I don't want to get into the names of the politicians that are causing the problems, but in general, the career political class is what's causing a lot of the problems. I think they're at the heart of why we can't solve our problems and some of the problems that exist today.
What about Donald Trump? He's not a career politician. Is he having a positive effect on the system this year?
I don't know that he's having a positive effect yet, but you can see the fatigue, the undercurrent of fatigue with career politicians illustrated by the fact that he's getting so much traction, so much attention. People are fed up with career politicians.
And is Trump in any way having a negative effect on politics?
I don't know. I'll leave that up to the experts to decide what happens
yeah, you're
in the
an
future.
expert.
No, I'm by far not an expert when it comes to politics. I'm an expert in national security. I've got some real-world experience in national security. I got real-world experience in the economy, and that's what I bring to the table. I can't have a lot of effect on the presidential race, but the uncertainty in the race for the White House is why my mission is so critical. And my mission, at the end of the day, is to keep this seat in the Republican Party.
So you're a combat veteran. You've served in the CIA. Let's move on to the Middle East and these accusations from Bob Graham and others that the Saudi government is playing both sides, our ally in public, but supporting ISIS and Al-Qaeda behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Is there something to that?
I've had access to and have read the classified 9/11 report. There are things in those documents that I think would be damaging to our strategic alliance with Saudi Arabia. So I don't want to get into the debate of whether Bob Graham is right or the sides of the debate, but I can tell you that there are aspects of what are involved in those classified documents that I think would change public opinion about our alliances with Saudi Arabia. That said, our role needs to be stability in the world, and Saudi Arabia is a partner, despite what you hear in the news these days and some of the rhetoric. And to walk away from Saudi Arabia would open the door to the Russians becoming closer and closer aligned with Saudi Arabia, or could potentially jeopardize the stability of the Saudi regime.
On the issue of climate change, is human activity contributing to a changing climate?
Sure, we impact our environment, certainly.
Should
but
there
does
be
that
more
mean
federal regulations to
The last
cut
thing
down?
we need is more federal regulations. And this administration continues to overstep its bounds, its constitutional authority by instilling these agreements by circumventing the Congress instead of using treaties. We need to balance the mitigation of our effect on the ecosystem with the need for a vibrant economy, and we can do that. We can walk and chew gum when it comes to climate change and our economy. We can walk and chew gum when it comes to security and our liberty.
Do you agree with the Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage?
That's an issue for the states. I don't agree that their decision was a correct one when it came to constitutionality.
At some point, the Senate is going to have to confirm a justice, at least one, on the Supreme Court. Give me who you think has been the best justice on the Supreme Court, either currently or all time, and why?
Scalia, without a doubt. He is an originalist. He's an originalist and he's a textualist.
You've had this battle in Florida, Republican versus Republican, over whether or not this state should accept some $50 billion to expand health care for the poor. Should we accept that federal money?
No, because there's so many strings attached, and the out years, the federal government steps back. So while we'll think we're getting a lot of money right now, the obligation for that expanded burden is going to fall on the states, and we can't afford that right now.
You want to make federal lawmakers read the bills before they vote on them. How do you make them do that? It would be great, but how do you make them do this? I know you can have some sort of electric, are you still reading yes or no? Sure. You can still get around that.
I don't know. There's enough technology now that we could audit whether you read the thing before you push yes or no on your vote card. The bigger point is we need to return to a citizen government. The way to do that is end career politicians. So I put out a 5-point plan that calls for 12-year term limits. So 2 terms in the Senate, 6 terms in the House of Representatives. Strip them from pension benefits. Make them read every bill one way or another. I'm sure we can come up with a way that we can audit whether they read the bill before they vote on it. No exemptions for Congress.
Would you agree unconditionally to a debate here on our stage?
Not only would I agree, I would call for a debate, and I openly challenge my opponents to a debate.
Mr. Wilcox, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, sir. I appreciate it.
Coming up,
they poison the dogs so they won't bark.
We investigate illegal immigrants crossing into Texas and the plan to build a Great Wall that ran out of money years ago.
Yeah, you could easily do it.
Charlie LeDuff will join us from the border.
Donald Trump took off on the promise of building a great wall on our southern border. Our government already built part of a wall, but it wound up trapping the wrong people. Charlie LeDuff met the Americans who have been walled off from their own country.
A gigantic 2,000-mile wall along the Mexican border. The cost, $80 billion by some estimates. If the Great Wall of China didn't work, how will this one? So we went to Brownsville, Texas, where the federal government actually started building one a few years ago. That is, until the government ran out of money.
Secure Fence Act is part of our efforts to reform our immigration system. We have more to do.
The first thing you notice is the border wall isn't on the border at all. Not in Texas. Because of treaties and flooding, they had to build a wall miles off the natural border, the Rio Grande River, which stretches 1,200 miles. And the Americans on the wrong side of the fence? They live in a no man's land of human smugglers and narco trafficking.
Well, take a look at this. 2 suspected drug smugglers from Mexico showing just how easy it is to hop the border into the U.S. When they think that someone spots them, they climb back out.
We don't go down the river anymore because it's quite dangerous, but the last time we went down, they have their boats lined up along the river to bring people across.
At night?
Anytime. Day or night, it makes no difference here.
Are you afraid?
No. We've had every dog poisoned. They poison the dogs so they won't bark.
And this is new since that?
Oh, everything is. It makes no difference.
It's all new now because of this fence?
Well,
because they come this way?
There's gaps in the fence, you know. It's not a complete deal.
I will build the greatest wall.
And it's going to be a serious wall. A big, beautiful, powerful wall. And nobody builds walls better than me, believe me.
If you think Trump's wall is the work of the Tea Party, then think again.
I know who voted. Bernie voted for it. I know he did.
And Hillary.
And Hillary voted for it too.
And Obama.
Yeah. And Obama voted, yeah.
This used to be a golf club until the government walled it off from the United States. It didn't stop illegals from using it as a right-of-way. It did stop golfers from coming, and after 28 years, the owner went bankrupt.
I saw some guys cross, and when we turned over here, I'd seen some guys climb the fence, the actual fence. It shouldn't be comical. It shouldn't be something to laugh at because, you know, that was our money, all those millions is spent. But it almost was because it's like, didn't even slow them down, you know.
See if I can put one into Mexico.
Quattro! That's over. Easily.
Ooh, I hit cement.
Border Patrol says a wall can be useful for funneling smugglers away from city centers, but you can still go around it, or over it, or under it. And remember the Central American women and children from 2 years ago pouring in over the Texas border, the stuff of international headlines? Well, they're back at about the same numbers. But this year, well, we've got another TV reality show. And though these Central Americans arrived from Mexico, the Mexican government refuses to take the Central Americans back. Maybe we should start there, says Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas.
We do have that agreement already with Mexico. We can return them back pretty quickly.
If they're Mexican.
If they're Mexican, there you go. That's the key. But anybody else, you have to go through a different process. That is something that Senator Cornyn and I tried to change 2 years ago, but the U.S. Congress just didn't want to get into that fight.
Didn't want to get into that.
They didn't want to get into it. And I thought it was wrong of the U.S. Congress not to do that.
Might be some foot sign down there. We'll see some between here and there. You got the disturbed rock here that was pushed back. So you got at least 5 through here.
This is a kid.
Yeah.
Look how small that is. Big as my hand.
Forget about the wall or the people who live in the interior of the United States and came illegally, says National Border Patrol Council Vice President Chris Cabrera. He says we're releasing 70% of the people currently apprehended at the border today.
So we got the same problem we had 2 years ago when it was all over the news.
Yeah.
Same number of people.
Exactly.
You've done nothing.
Nothing, not at all.
Except talk about a wall.
Yeah, talk about a wall, talk about sending them home, talk about enforcing the law. Unfortunately, none of it's been done.
Heard a bunch of men's voices talking in here, Spanish. But they're not coming out and I'm not going in there. They'll wait till night. Hope they know that old lady's got a gun. And that wall's not gonna keep them out. Disculpe, señores.
Silence in Washington and voices in the bush. Families sometimes, dope dealers, or worse. Either way, they're coming. Wall or no wall.
Coming up, that tit for tat between Governor Scott and California Governor Jerry Brown. We'll show you how it could pay off or backfire for Florida and who may come out on top.
Well, Governor Scott started a feud with California's Governor Jerry Brown, so Evan Axelbank fact-checked their claims, starting with what Scott said about California.
What they're doing is hurting their economy.
California Governor Jerry Brown, knowing that Rick Scott is on his turf trying to convince companies to trade the Golden State for the Sunshine State, is responding in kind. Brown sent Scott a letter saying that California's economy is the 7th largest in the world and that Scott should spend more time worrying about climate change if he's serious about Florida's economy.
Okay, Evan, you also found more jobs flowing from Florida into California than California into Florida. What do the numbers show, and what did Governor Scott tell you about it?
Well, it's so interesting because the Census Bureau not only tracks how many people move from state to state, but they also track how many jobs move from state to state. The number of jobs that came from California to Florida, 38,726 since 2010. The number of jobs that went from here to there, so from Florida to California, is actually more, 44,306. So Rick Scott may not want to hear those numbers.
And back to the issue of climate change, which Governor Brown brought up here. The governor of this state has faced a lot of questions and criticism. Governor Scott has faced even claims that he has banned his own administration from using the words climate change, and we've seen some evidence that there may be something to it.
Demanding that states have a climate change plan.
It will require that future versions of our mitigation plan will be required to have language discussing that issue.
What issue is that?
The issue that you mentioned earlier regarding
And so to Governor Brown's criticisms as it relates to climate change, what does Governor Scott have to say?
Well, Governor Scott certainly has heard the criticisms all before. One of the things that Governor Scott says is our economy in Florida has to be solid enough to address environmental challenges on their own, never mind whether they're caused by climate change. So it's funny, the two governors take different tacks. Governor Brown says, what's the point of having jobs if you're not going to have a state because of climate change? Governor Scott says, well, hey, I have to have jobs to fix the environmental problems.
All right, Evan, thank you so much for working on this, for digging into the numbers, and for your time here tonight. And thank all of you for watching. We will see you next week.